Hey guys, welcome to the Dr. Joe Show. We're back. We're gonna be piggybacking on the theme from the last, the second to last podcast on omega fatty acids, and I did a little bit more of a deep dive on omega-9s this time, and I just wanted to recap on the last show, folks. The last show about omegas. That was a shorter podcast, I think about 37 minutes. But if you go back, remember that cardiovascular death is really not a whole lot better than it was even in the mid 1990s. So I crunched the total cardiovascular death for 2022. It was 263 per 100,000, very similar to what it was 30 years ago. So
the interesting thing I find about that is it's not worse.
It's not worse.
Objectively, using the counting metric.
Yeah. And the CDC is using some sort of age-adjusted number, which anytime you adjust something, you're just making the number look lower, which is just giving everybody a false sense that we're doing a good job. We're not doing a good job, folks. So we're, and when I say we, I mean just the whole umbrella of trying to keep people not just healthy, but trying to make things better. So cardiovascular death remains the number one killer, and we're going to go into a little bit more of why. So we're going to be posting all the links. I have all the links right here, and I'll make sure that goes in the description box. I notice I haven't been putting them in all the description boxes, but it seems plant biologists care more about omegas than our own nutritionists do. But this is an article, it's from 2008, Enhancing Plant Seed Oils for Human Nutrition. And really good points in here. The bottom line is there's a concern that sustainability is the limiting factor. And what is the most sustainable way to get omega-3s? Because it's not going to be fish. It's not going to be algae, because algae is very expensive to develop and produce. And so what's the answer? But they do bring up some interesting tidbits here of potentially reprogramming plants to make omega-3s. But then we're talking about genetic engineering, so more genetically engineered plants in our future, if we can pull that off. But I want to talk about omega-9s. I'm really excited about this. Omega-9 fatty acids. Early life exposure to omega-9 monounsaturated fatty acids result in gonadal regression and elevated stress levels in pubertal male rats. And this is a study from Thailand. This was published in 2020 in the Songklagakerin Scientific Technology Journal. So rats. Now, rats are considered a sort of microcosm of what to expect in humans, right? That's why we do a lot of those studies. But early life exposure to omega-9s. Have you heard of omega-9s?
Nope.
Folks, if you haven't heard of omega-9, the most common omega-9 fatty acid is called oleic acid. And if you pause this video and you scroll down to the description box, you can open up another tab. Click on the Canadian website. It's the canolainfo.org. So folks, pause the video, scroll down, click on that, and then it's the fat chart and nutritional analysis chart. So that's what I'm talking about. But omega-9 fatty acids, oleic acid, you'll notice on that chart that it makes up a significant proportion of canola oil, actually more than half. It's also almost more than 3/4 maybe of safflower oil, and the majority of several others, including sunflower oil, about half of peanut oil, and maybe a significantly 2/5 of lard. So it's in there. So we have a generation of young men now, in particular. I'm just going to talk about the men right now, the young men. They face higher body mass index more mental illness. And I can't help but wonder if this is somewhat to contribute here. So think about that. And the fertility problem, right? Yeah. Our fertility is going down. And omega-9 has been in our oils for decades now. So, and I'm glad we're just getting on that in 2020. So let's jump to another one over here. I really like this one. This is a study that came out of Nigeria, and it was accepted by the paper in 2016. And the link is going to be in the description for this one. DNA fragmentation and oxidative stress compromise sperm motility and survival in late pregnancy exposure to omega-9 fatty acid in rats. So a lot of a similar thing here, but a similar study done in a completely different part of the world. I just wonder why we're not doing these studies here in the United States.
Well, they're doing plenty of obesity studies.
We're doing lots of obesity studies, of course. I mean,
So it's not really.
you got to manage the obesity. We manage things. We don't cure.
Nutrition and exercise are the drugs. Those are supposed to be the drugs, right? And everything else should be supplemental.
Yeah.
Instead, we have it backwards.
Yeah.
Drugs, and then, you can change your diet if you want.
Well,
That's the whole thing with these GLP-1s. It's like, you
Yeah.
can still eat what you want to eat, and you just won't want to eat as much. But
yeah, and at least you're getting something out of that. I think the GLP-1s, I think they're pushing people towards that intermittent fasting. Because you talk to functional medicine doctors and they're gonna tell you eat in a 6-hour window. They won't. Some of them will not even tell you to change your diet. We'll just start by eating in a 6-hour window. The patients of mine that can carry that out, they see benefits. Their A1Cs come down, and they lose. If I see them 3 months later, they'll lose 10 to 15 pounds at least.
with no GLP-1.
With no medication intervention, because a lot of people just want to see if they can do it themselves, and when they can actually carry out the orders, then voila. Now, I was talking about the boys and the men. Okay, for the ladies out there, this is particularly important. We talked about in a few podcasts ago. We talked about breast cancer.
Clearly, estrogenation.
So breast. Oh, there we go. We're back to estrogenation. But see, you weren't in on the last podcast, so it didn't come up. So,
That's right.
but so folks, that one didn't count. Okay. Anyway, because Dan wasn't active on that one. But anyway, so breast cancer. Why am I bringing this up again? And what does this have to do with omega-9s? Well, according to this study from Mexico, okay, another completely different part of the world, looking at omega-9s, which have completely overrun and infiltrated our food industry. Role of arachidonic acid metabolism in STAT5 activation induced by oleic acid in MDA-MB231 breast cancer cells. What does all that mean? So that MDA-MB231, that's a designation to the cell type that they were using. And that's a lab thing, and we don't really care, okay, unless we're going to be repeating this study. But arachidonic acid, if you all will remember, arachidonic acid is an omega-6 fatty acid, and we need omega-6 fatty acids. We just don't need so much of them that there's no omega-3s, but we do need it, right? But it seems that, according to this study, oleic acid works with arachidonic acid, so an omega-9 fatty acid works with an omega-6 fatty acid to help breast cancer proliferate and migrate. Particularly in breast cancer cells, the free fatty acid oleic acid, OLA, induces proliferation, migration, invasion, and an increase in a secretion of a particular MP9. Anyway, so the bottom line is we have to ask the question. We're back to, again, go tab over to the other thing I told you all to open, that Canadian website on the content of canola oil. We got a lot of omega-9 in there. And is this a part of the reason why breast cancer incidence is just going up?
Now, is it just because it's cheap? Is that why it's being used?
Well, yeah, like we talked about before. Thanks to Clyde Edgar. Again, folks in Yuma, check out the olive oil store downtown Yuma on Main Street. But the way Clyde said it, he said something like canola oil is actually rapeseed oil, and it was an industrial oil that went into machines, and it wasn't really meant for our consumption.
Yeah, this first article you brought, the most abundant plant oils are palm, soy, and rapeseed. Together, these account for 75% of the world vegetable oil production.
Okay.
So 75%.
So
World's vegetable oil comes from these three things, and that's what most people eat. And this article is probably talking about synthetic creation of these oils.
Well, actually, they get into looking into synthetic creation of omega-3s because we don't have a lot of sustainable sources of omega-3s. This is the problem we have. Because the ideal omega-3 ratio, do you all remember from the other podcast? If you don't, one of the papers that we reviewed said that a ratio of either 1-to-1 or 1-to-2 of omega-3 to omega-6 was better than having a ratio of like 1-to-8, with 8 being the proportion of omega-6. Or 0-to-8. Or like, 0-to-8. Some people... And again, folks, go back to the graph. I mean, it speaks volumes. This canola oil, they're saying there's omega-3s in that oil, but the problem is that fraction, how do you know if it's oxidized or not? How do you know it's fresh? Nobody knows. So, and this, again, it goes back to our interview with Mr. Clyde Edgar about the correct way to make olive oil. Making olive oil that's good, that's not oxidized, that doesn't smell and taste rancid and burn your mouth. It's an arduous, specific, precise process. You got to harvest the oil within 6 hours.
Do you have hope for synthetic omega-3s?
We're going to have hope in something because, first of all, so let's say everybody became aware of this problem. I haven't crunched the numbers. I don't know what deficit of omega-3s our planet has. I'm not sure if anybody has crunched that number.
But like just from a, I guess, entropy standpoint, I'm assuming it's easiest to synthesize omega-9, omega-6 than omega-3.
Well, I think it's more about purifying and extracting it. But I don't think they're purified or extracted. I just think that these oils, again, on that big chart, folks, this is just based on the analysis of those oils as of 2016. So, so you can tell that omega-9 is the majority of canola oil. But canola oil has less omega-6 than, say, corn oil. Corn oil has almost, half of it is omega-6. So corn's really bad for you because corn oil, it's really inflammatory.
So omega-6 is more inflammatory
than omega-9. I think omega-9 is more subtle. I think omega-9 just exudes different effects. It messes with gametes. Now I don't know if I didn't read anything about testosterone.
It says testosterone or testicular prolactin, testosterone, follicle stimulating, and luteinizing hormone levels were decreased.
Okay.
While corticosterone level was increased.
Oh yes.
Corticosterone levels may adversely affect and these are from omega-9.
Actually, yeah, I think I did read that. I just forgot. I read that one once. Yeah, so actually, yeah, it does. It does decrease the testosterone. So trans fat.
Estrogenation again.
So we're back to estrogenation again. So we got trans fat, we got omega-6, and we have omega-9s, and they all wreak havoc on testosterone and male fertility. And omega-9 causes pubertal stress. in at least the animal models. So you can't help but wonder if this is part of what's going on in our population now, because there's all these young people going on all these drugs and they're eating all these foods.
This corticosterone, what is it? Corticosterone?
Corticosterone is one of the intermediates.
Is that a precursor to cortisol? Or
I don't remember if it's a precursor or not, but I know it's a precursor to. Is it a precursor to testosterone?
is what stimulates cortisol, right?
Yeah, ACTH is the.
Mentioned yet, so
I always got to look at that chart from the endocrine book. I never remember. But
either way, though, it's.
But the point here, folks, is what do you take away from this? What does all this mean? This means that you need to invest in your health. You need to look at what you put in your body with a very critical eye. And you need to look at not just what you put in your body, but what you let your children put in their body. And if you just increase awareness about this, then you'll help a lot of people, including yourself.
No, unsaturated fatty acids.
Yeah, so you'll read in these articles high-fat diets. You know, they used to use the phrase high-fat diet. I think they still use that phrase. What does that mean, high-fat diet? Because if you say high-fat diet, it means all fats.
Right.
So we're and they were vilifying saturated fats, but saturated fats reduce your risk of stroke. And yet they want to make saturated fat the villain here, but it's really not the case. So this study, role of arachidonic acid metabolism by oleic, this study will be linked, but it was very difficult to get the PDF. It'll be hard for folks to get the whole article, but it's an interesting read.
Check it out. Research has revealed that hormones such as luteinizing hormone and ACTH possibly change unsaturated fatty acid composition in the testes by changing activity of the enzymes. Such enzyme activities include the fact that the testes design sperm fatty acids to maintain membrane fluidity to achieve their biological goal, since it has already been established that testes have high capacities for desaturation and elongation of unsaturated fatty acids. So there you go. ACTH is being affected by this.
And what are the so
it's got to be cortisol too, because that works inverse.
It comes back to a lot of the things we've talked about before, and so
elevated stress levels. My mind went to cortisol.
Exactly.
Wow.
And this I want
people get stressed out by you think how people are they say we live in a higher stress society. I mean it can't be
well, you have generations of kids that spent way more time in front of screens, that spent way less time riding a bike or running on the playground or running around a track or throwing a ball around or something. And then you're bombarding them with these omega-9s and omega-6s. So I do hear of a lot of friends, parents of just parents around the country, friends of mine, their kids have stress. And you could blame the tech age, but the diet I think is a catalyst. So,
if it happens in rats, they haven't studied this in humans, like you said.
At least not. Yeah. Plant biologists are more interested in our nutrition than our own nutritionists. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think that's one area that maybe hasn't been completely sold out? Although
hard to say.
Yeah, maybe we just see less of it.
There's some selling out going on. Saying that mineral depletion in our food is meaningless. There's an article that says that. We could do that in the next one maybe if I can find it, if I can dig it up. But
magnesium in our coffee.
Yeah, you have to supplement everything now.
Shout out Life Boost, by the way.
Shout out to Life Boost.
One of our sponsors. Well, not official sponsor.
Not official sponsor, but we are affiliated. This is an article by Dr. Covington, from the University of Maryland School of Medicine from 2004, volume 70, number 1. So maybe some of the providers out there know about this article, but it's just called omega-3 fatty acids. We have known this. They reduce risk for sudden death. They say fatty fish like salmon and tuna and fish oil are rich sources of omega-3 fatty acids, icosapentaenoic acid and docosahexaenoic acid, flaxseed. Oh, they said canola oil.
They included that.
They included it. And walnuts are good dietary source. Now, the walnuts is correct. Walnuts are good sources. But I'm going to just skip down to here. Higher dosages of omega-3s are required to reduce elevated triglyceride levels 2 to 4 grams a day. And then this also can reduce morning stiffness with regard to rheumatoid arthritis.
Wait. So canola oil, we know it as omega-9.
We know it has omega-9 and some omega-6 in it.
So why do they say omega-3? Was this before the...
Well, I think...
this was 2004.
They're saying dosages, so I think right here they're saying like an actual devoted omega-3 supplement. I'm not sure they're saying canola oil is permissible because now it's a percentage thing.
Okay.
And then modest decreases in blood pressure. So they're
saying that because there is maybe some omega-3 in canola oil.
Well, again, folks, go back to that chart that's from that Canadian website, and there's a little sliver of omega-3 in there.
Okay.
But again, is it oxidized?
And the ratio is definitely not 1 to 1.
This is a great paper because they're picking up on it. But what they didn't pick up on was purity. So canola oil is not a good source of omega-3s because it's probably going to be oxidized, number one. Number two, I don't want to put that much omega-9 in my body. Even if the omega-3s in there are good, there's other sources, so I wouldn't spend my money on it anyway. And three, we now know even more sources of omega-3s. Leafy greens have some omega-3s in them. Certain specific seeds. And I'm gonna backpedal a little bit here, Dan. We talked about flaxseed during our estrogeneration discussion and about how bad it is particularly for men. But with the proportion, folks, look at the chart, with the proportion of omega-3 in flax oil, I think we should consider flax oil as a potential source, provided that folks have a plan to offset the estrogenic effects of the lignans. So then we would maybe...
Would be what, omega-6 or omega-9?
Well, it's just another chemical that's part of flax. Flax just... it has this estrogenic effect, and it was in the estrogeneration book, folks. So that, and maybe then you would have use of the extract of DIM, diindolyl methane, which is a extract from cruciferous vegetables, and that's so that combo for men is something to consider if men are going to use flax oil. But I would consider it an experiment because I'm just not sure that anyone has studied unheated, unoxidized flax oil with DIM. I can't think of a study that's looked at that. But that's a solution I came up with thinking about this. It's a theoretical one.
Interesting.
And this paper also talked about specifically for high triglycerides 2 to 4 grams a day. But we're not talking about a proportion. So if you could get your proportions or just limit your omega-6 and be on at least 2 grams a day of omega-3s on a regular basis, maybe that's the goal. Maybe it should be 2 grams a day of omega-3s, no more than 1 to 2 grams of omega-6, and then just make sure you don't get omega-6 from anything else.
Which would be like what are some
Store-bought salad dressings, basically all those things in plastic or glass. If they're store-bought, they're probably going to have lots of omega-6 in them. The processed foods, again, folks, read the ingredients. You see any of these oils from from this little picture, I'm telling everybody to look at. It's that link, okay? And Dan, how about right about here, just to make sure everybody sees it. You got to look for those ingredients in all the foods you're eating or considering buying, and stay away from them, or at least limit them, because omega-6, like we said, omega-6 is driving up inflammation in everybody. And there's other sources of omega-3s. Folks need to build their own diet plan for them. I don't think one diet fits everybody, and I think that's why this is really complicated.
Yep. Although there's little information concerning the effect of omega-9 on the male reproductive indices, researchers have shown its beneficial roles. Omega-9 is a dietary monounsaturated fatty acid, but then the study goes on to show how it results in gonadal regression and elevated stress levels. And
they're just trying to be moderate. They're just trying to tiptoe
in relation to omega-6, I guess. But so it's at least the same, if not slightly worse.
Hey, if folks can find anything beneficial about omega-9s, drop it in the comments below. I would love to know, because this looks pretty dismal, folks. And breast cancer is just doing this. So
you think that's prostate cancer also, or?
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised. Cancer is considered to be inflammatory, an immune system problem,
And
a metabolic disorder problem, genetic problem.
The cancer cells go rogue and lose the ability to metabolize glucose properly.
Yeah. And then you end up just feeding it with too much glucose, which is why ketosis is one thing I would consider. I mean, if I ever had that diagnosis, knock wood, if I ever had that, I would, and I wanted to knock it out, I would go keto, and I would put myself into ketosis as much as possible. Sure. It would be worth it.
Maybe even keto with fasting.
No.
72-hour fast, and then keto when you start eating again.
So just keep your ketones up.
Starve the glucose out of the cancer.
And then the only problem is protein, because you put the protein in there, and then you're going to get some gluconeogenesis out of the protein, out of alanine, but
better than
letting
those glucose swimming around and feeding the beast.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good studies on fasting and cancer and chemotherapy as well.
Yeah.
Well, this was interesting. I mean, it's kind of like the end of the, what is it, the trilogy of the omega?
Of the omegas, yeah, omega-3, omega-6, and omega-9. There you have it, folks.
I mean, I never even heard of omega-9.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard of oleic acid. I just didn't know that it was actually designated as omega-9. But folks, I hope that you can put something together here and apply it to your life. Look critically at the things you're putting in your body, and if there's any preponderance of these oils, you got to get rid of them. If there's too much omega-6 and not enough 3, I'm gonna bet for the majority of you that's probably the case. Fix the ratio, and that's just omega fatty acids. I don't know, Dan, can you think of anything else? I can't think of anything else.
No, I mean, these are great articles. Like, I'm going to read them, especially these first two. I'm really interested in this plant one also, and how you might be able to use biology for...
And there were some that I didn't print out. They're going to be in the description box. Yeah, there's another review article. It's from Cambridge, but it's about dietary sources of omega-3s, public health risks and benefits, and they go into a little bit more depth about krill oil and algae and other things. So krill is this little critter that lives in the water, and that's another potential source of omegas, and probably a little more sustainable than algae, since they just go around and eat the algae, but But check it out. And you can use that as a reference when you're determining how you want to change your diet if you do.
I'm not sure you brought this one up, but pregnant women should also avoid omega-9.
Oh yeah. So actually, I didn't really flesh it out. So this particular article from just
Shout out to the Nigerians. There's a lot of our students are from there.
so late pregnancy exposure to omega-9 and survival. So this might be why certain women get more morning sickness than others. It's because
Sperm motility.
they're eating too many of these omega-9s, and then they go and vomit. And so they go and eat a meal with a bunch of people. Everybody tolerates it. The pregnant lady goes and throws it all up, and it's because of this. It's because the baby's threatened by omega-9s.
But also the survival. So not just the sperm motility. So actually getting pregnant, right?
Yeah.
The birth rates it's another thing we didn't really discuss.
Birth rates.
Decreasing birth rates.
Yeah.
Sperm motility and survival in late pregnancy exposure in rats. Again, they haven't done this in people.
Yeah. And again, the microcosm right here.
The omega-6 to omega-3 ratio of 25:1 to 40:1, which has been attributed to the impaired semen quality, and/or recently we reported that the exposure of male offspring to omega-9 during pregnancy altered the male reproductive hormones, reduced the weight of reproductive organs, altered the age of sexual maturation. Investigations have also shown that the testes. So this article, guys, you should read it because it talks both about the effects on fertility for both men and women when it comes to birth rates. So for those of you trying to...
Birth rates going down, breast cancer going up. We're trying to show you why, folks, or at least one part of the reason why.
One big part.
Yeah. So, as usual, none of this is medical advice. This is stuff for you to consider. Pose all of this to your primary doctor before you make any changes to anything. And
the problem is this stuff needs to be labeled properly in the stores. If we're going to introduce regulation and regulatory capture.
Well, I mean,
put on the bottle.
Well,
omega-9, omega-6, omega-3.
Well, I mean, California has all those labels saying this product contains chemicals known to the state of California that causes whatever, So why can't we put that on omega-9s?
Right.
Why can't we? Because, the FDA is supposed to follow this old rule, and I can't remember the name. It was during the aspartame one that we talked about this. There's supposed to be this rule that the FDA is supposed to follow that if anything causes or promotes cancer in animal models, it shouldn't be allowed. And yet, after World War II, we just opened the floodgates of canola oil onto the populace. And you go from cardiovascular death rate of 150 in the 19 teens, and it went as high as over 300. And now we're sitting at 260. That's not that big of an improvement if we have cutting-edge medical technology. The problem is the raw materials we're putting in our body. So it's just saying the same thing in a different way.
Once again, the evidence is here. Go check out the links in the show notes, guys.
Yeah, lots of stuff to read around this. So if you like the video, please comment, like. Oh, subscribe and share.
Bye-bye.